Hello fellow quirky people, this is your host Anna coming at you with another Guardians 3 video. The movie introduced us to one of the cruelest MCU villains ever. Played by Chukwudi Iwuji, the High Evolutionary was the creator of many species in the galaxy, and most of them saw him as God. But his goal was to find the perfect group of beings, and it was this pursuit of perfection that led him to create multiple species and not care about them. In the comics, he was obsessed with the concept of evolution and used science to transform humans and animals into hybrids. His scientific experiments didn't just stick to other animals, as he even evolved himself. That resulted in him having a higher intellect than any regular human. Using his high intelligence, he was able to empower himself with multiple superhuman abilities. He did that in the MCU as well. But before we look at all the species he is confirmed to have created in the MCU, I'd love it if you guys would click on those like and subscribe buttons to support our channel. With that out of the way, let's look at the species the High Evolutionary created before the events of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. At number 1, we've got Rocket Raccoon and Batch 89. After visiting Earth, the High Evolutionary came across the idea that his new world should be just like Earth. Hence, he created Counter-Earth, and he wanted to inhabit this planet with evolved animals instead of humans. So, his experiments led him to transform a regular earthly raccoon into a cybernetically engineered walking, talking raccoon. But Rocket wasn't the only one who underwent genetic and cybernetic manipulation. This brutality was also conducted on an otter, who became Lila and got extended arms. Then there was the walrus, who had gigantic wheels attached to him and named himself Teefs. And finally, we saw a rabbit who named herself Floor, and was enhanced with cybernetic spider limbs. All these animals got the abilities to talk and do other things that regular Earth animals cannot. Together, they were all a part of Batch 89, which also had several evolved animals. But since they were named Batch 89, one could imagine that there could have been at least 88 other batches of species that the High Evolutionary could have created. In fact, we are sure that the High Evolutionary also created 2 other failed batches after number 89. Then the 92nd batch were the Humanimals. Thanks to Rocket's fix, Herbert Wyndham managed to successfully create humanoid animal hybrids known as the Humanimals. They were put into chambers that forced hundreds of years of genetic evolution upon a particular animal at once. And by reaching their final stage, they were part human and part animals and had no rageful side effects. So they were the ones who got to live at Counter-Earth, as Herbert thought of them to be his perfect creation. But since the planet mirrored Earth, so did these Humanimals. They turned out to be similar to humans and picked up their bad attributes as well. So the High Evolutionary ended up destroying the entire race of Humanimals by exploding Counter-Earth. Up next, he created the Sovereign. In the comics, a group of researchers on Earth who called themselves Enclave were the ones that led to the formation of Adam. He was originally called Him. But later, the High Evolutionary got his hands on Him's cocoon and began to further his evolution process. Since Him was the first of his kind, the High Evolutionary gave him the name Adam, being inspired by Adam and Eve. Then the soul gem was implanted on his head, and he got the title of Warlock. But in the MCU, the High Evolutionary was directly responsible for the creation of Adam. Fans were surprised to see that he also created the entire Sovereign species that was introduced in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. He thought that the Sovereign were close to perfect, but they all turned out to be egotistical. Hence, Herbert had to come up with other species including Zeronians. Gamora revealed that the High Evolutionary is responsible for the creation of the race called Zeronians. We've only seen the Zeronians twice in the MCU. The first Zeronian was spotted in Thor: The Dark World's post-credit scene in the Collector's Vault. Then we spotted another Zeronian on Xandar in the original Guardians of the Galaxy. Next up we've got Animen. Gamora stated that the Animen were formed by the High Evolutionary. They were known to be Herbert's enforcers and minions in the early Marvel comics. As a result, the MCU versions of the Animen could have either been a previous iteration of the Humanimals, or a future version of them after Batch 92. They could have also come a step before his more terrifying species called Hellspawn. The High Evolutionary unleashed armies of his creation known as Hellspawn on the Guardians, and nowhere during the final act of Guardians 3. These creatures are portrayed as terrifying animal cybernetic hybrids. They were specifically made to defend the High Evolutionary's flawless society. 2 of these Hellspawn people included Warpig and Behemoth, who acted as the top henchmen of Herbert. After them, we've got the Recorders. The High Evolutionary was frequently accompanied by 2 recorders, Fel and Vim played by Nico Santos and Miriam Shore respectively. There were several other recorders who serve him throughout the film. It's not confirmed, but one could argue that the recorders were genetic constructs made specifically to serve the High Evolutionary. After all, they shared similar traits of bald heads, blazing eyes, and cybernetic implants. Another prominent species we saw in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 was the Star Children. After the Humanimals experiment failed, Herbert still continued his pursuit to create the perfect species, and in came a new colony species that were referred to as Star Children. They were all white-haired genetically altered children. They were close to perfect in the way that they required little food or rest and were stronger than regular humans. They all had higher intellects as well, and one of the main Star Children was Phyla, played by Kai Zen. In the comics, she is the daughter of the original Captain Marvel and an Eternal called Elysius. She even went on to become Captain Marvel and Quasar, but here we see her having some sort of cosmic ability with her glowing eyes and energized hands. So she might be on her way to become Quasar in the MCU as well. Okay, that's all from the list of species created by the High Evolutionary. Once again, I'm reminding you to hit those like and subscribe buttons if you enjoyed this video. And don't forget to check out some other great content on our channel. Goodbye, and I'll see you in the next one.